this is going to be something that gives some folks, I think, something to be excited about each week.
A little slow for me, as it took me 4 times just to get that one sentence out. So apologies for that. I guess it's still preseason for me. But
I said Doran too. I meant Dave Dawson. So.
Yeah, we're just
killing it right now.
Take 5.
Couple fumbles. Boom, boom.
Rewind. Welcome back in. Slow mess. John Reed's Jesse Simonton. What is the biggest story right now in the SEC, Jesse?
I mean, I guess today it's that all these teams have kind of started to decide on their quarterbacks, Tennessee being principal among them. I would say writ large, because nobody's played a game yet and everybody's still 0-0, it's got to either be Arch Manning and what's going to happen with Texas, with everything going on down in Austin, or is it LSU and, LSU who? I mean, we've discussed that in some of these previous episodes. I think that both of those teams, particularly because of the 2 games that they're playing in a week or a little more than a week, Texas going to Ohio State, LSU going to Clemson, 2 top 5 matchups there. I think those are probably the 2 bigger storylines. In your neighborhood, though, it's quarterbacks being decided, and Joey Aguilar, not surprising. You had a beat on this. I'll ask you on this, though. I did think the timing of the news was a bit odd. I know that they like the leak stuff. I know they like the leak stuff, and we did some kind of behind the scenes kind of talk on this before with VolQuest and that relationship and that kind of stuff. They're always going to be the principal news breakers. Hubs is awesome, AP is awesome, but I just thought that, I don't know, like if you were really excited about it, I either would have come out and made that announcement Sunday, like myself, as like the Tennessee athletic department. Josh Heupel releases a statement. Joey Aguilar has our full backing. He's going to be our quarterback. Or I would have done what Ryan Day did today, which is no one had a clue on the Ohio State beat. They thought that it was going to be Julian Sayin. They had a lead just like you. It was going to be Julian, but it wasn't decided, so to speak. And he comes out and gets on the podium and says, hey, Sayin's our guy. The fact that Tennessee didn't go that avenue, I thought was a bit odd.
Well, then you go back to last week. I mean, Pete Nakos put it out like on Wednesday, just kind of randomly that it was trending towards Joey Aguilar, which I thought was a little head scratching. Just that like he had a beat on it. But, we didn't talk last week, but on my radio show on Monday, I had talked about how I was told it was over. Like, because coming out of the first scrimmage, it was so lopsided from everything I'd heard in terms of, Jake Merklinger dropping the ball and, blowing his opportunity, that it was going to be Joey Aguilar. Like I was told, like, hey, it maybe isn't like 100% official, but like the quarterback competition is over. So they knew, 8 days or, really, I guess 6-7 days ago, and just strung it out. But then, I guess that got to Nakos on Wednesday. So then he put out the leak, and then nobody on Tennessee's side really addressed it. But the conversation surrounding it definitely changed. It went from like, hey, all these guys are doing everything differently at a high level, or this guy's better at this and this guy's better at that. And then it just turned into all pro Joey talk, which to me, reading the tea leaves, is just like, yep, everyone knows that the battle's over. It's just we're waiting for a green light to officially do it. And then, like you said, then it just randomly kind of comes Sunday night. I get the idea of wanting to do it Sunday night to like have a full game week, because they keep talking about wanting to have a mock game week, right, in terms of just getting to do the preparation. But like you said, not letting Josh Heupel say it with his chest, or Tennessee putting out an announcement, has left some fans wondering, how proud of it they are, or, just wondering why they waited so long.
Well, especially when you add in the fact that, and again, these can be separate issues, but you add in the fact the way that Nico left, the way that Nico departed, the way that Heupel then kind of, with his chest made it be known that, hey, no player is above the power T. This is, and the fans really rallied around him through all that to then basically make that trade with UCLA for Joey Aguilar. Aguilar's a guy that I think it's not a surprise that he won the job. The fact that he's had 60 touchdowns the last 2 seasons or something like that. close to that, 56 or something like that. He has a lot more experience. Obviously, McIntyre's never really played. The young freshman, has never played. And so
I like that, by the way. You just combined the two of them, Merklinger, McIntyre.
Yeah.
McIntyre. I like it. I'm going to pretend you did. I'm going to pretend you did it intentionally because, they did kind of blend in together. And then, once after the first scrimmage, it was basically like, hey, McIntyre actually looks better than Merklinger. It's just you couldn't start a true freshman in that situation game one. So, like, McIntyre, the combo just kind of morphed into one and to the point where they said, like, hey, if you get halfway through the season and need a backup quarterback, it might actually be the true freshman McIntyre. So that
would not surprise me at all. If that would not surprise me at all. I think that if Tennessee does have kind of a regression season, I think we got some questions in the mailbag later that kind of touches on this. How do we think the QB situation is going to play out? It would not surprise me at all that if Tennessee struggles, come Halloween or maybe a little bit before that Heupel does say, hey, let's turn to the true freshman. Because another, I think, element of why Aguilar always was going to be a favorite in this job, we have to admit that in today's new landscape, the dynamics of what you are paying players does matter in terms of return on potential investments and that kind of stuff. Now, it could be a sunk cost again come Halloween, but even if you got a big discount from Joey Aguilar compared to what you may have been having to pay Nico, he is still probably getting more money, I would say, NIL for this season. Maybe not for obviously the lifetime of whatever contract McIntyre may be getting, but for this season, he's going to be making more than either one of those guys. So you're saying if we put that investment in that, do we need at least to give him a shot?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't know what the actual going rate is, but Aguilar, his NIL with Tennessee is reportedly like $1.2 million, and Merklinger to stay and compete for the job, to not run away when Aguilar got brought in, basically got bumped up from $200,000 to like $700,000. So I thought that those two combined being less than what you had for Nico kind of, to me, made the money situation a wash in this quarterback battle. Because, like, $1.2 million, that's not like some big investment for a starting quarterback in the SEC. I would say there's plenty of backups, making not too far below that. Maybe that's wrong, but, like, it felt like it wasn't if you bring Aguilar in and you're paying him $2.5–3 million, then I agree. But, like, to me, the 1.2 price tag was still low enough that it felt like a real battle.
Yeah, that's fair. And you're right that it is probably pennies on the dollar, especially compared to what other SEC programs that are vying for a playoff are paying their quarterbacks.
Now, I want your thoughts on this. I'm in it every day. I'm curious what you think from not necessarily a completely unbiased standpoint, because you do have some ties in Knoxville. You spent some time here. You know the program. How do you think Joey Aguilar is going to fare as QB1?
Well, I think that the issue with Joey Aguilar is probably going to have little to do with Joey Aguilar and what's kind of surrounding him. It seems like Tennessee's wide receiver room has been pretty beat up, throughout fall camp. I think that's a concern. Obviously, Joey Aguilar is good enough to be able to pick up Heupel's system this quickly. Heupel's system notoriously, is basically a shoots and ladder thing where it's giving layups to these quarterbacks. So I don't think, it's overly complicated. But if if Braswell and Mikey Matthews and all these guys, if they're still dinged up and he's not able to get like a real rapport, I think there does seem to be, who's going to be, fill Jalen Wright's shoes at tailback. And then you have the offensive line concerns. It would just not surprise me at all if this Tennessee's offense, still is a little bit of, little sticky, little, in the mud. I think they're going to beat the hell out of Syracuse in week 1 because I don't think Syracuse is very good this year. They also named their quarterback today. Angeli from Notre Dame won that job. But it would not surprise me at all if they're still having to rely on Tim Banks' defense for at least the first month. And then it's, that Georgia game is obviously very big in week 3, but then I think it's some of those games in October that are really going to determine Tennessee's ceiling in this 25 season.
Now, you're right. We were sitting here last year wondering how they were going to replace Jalen Wright's production, and then Dylan Sampson came and ran for 22 touchdowns.
Right, Dylan Sampson,
hopefully the running backs can kind of step up again. But I've just seen a lot of discourse all offseason about how Nico wasn't very good, and it shouldn't be tough to replicate that. So do you think that Joey Aguilar has a better or worse season statistically than Nico did?
I actually think he'll eclipse Nico's stats, because I think one of Joey Aguilar's biggest strengths is that, well, purportedly, I should say, one of his biggest strengths is that he's much more accurate down the field. And so you may not get the dynamicisms of some of the running that Nico could do, but I do think that some of those layups I'm talking about, I think he's going to hit them. I think they're not going to, get smashed over the backboard. I think when a guy's running a 9 route, wide open, which happened last year, whether it was Squirrel White or whoever, and Nico's kind of overthrowing them, I don't think that's going to be as big of an issue. Now, I don't think he's going to put up monster numbers, because, again, I do think there's some real offensive line concerns there. Now, it's a unit that, honestly, probably, John, could be better by season's end than they were a year ago, because I think the upside's there. Yeah, that the upside's there, but it's like, again, you're probably starting a 5-star true freshman at tackle. You got a brand new center who's replacing Cooper Mays, who was an all-SEC guy. So there certainly are, I think the cohesion and the continuity there is going to take some time.
What's the trade-off for you? Because all the talk about Joey, and when you look at his stats at App State, a little bit more reckless with the football, a little bit more willing to put it in danger. For all of his flaws, Nico didn't really do that. He kind of continued the trend for Tennessee quarterbacks of protecting the football, only threw 5 interceptions. Now, some would say that was because he was either overthrowing the deep shots or simply taking all the checkdowns or scrambling versus trying to fit the ball into tight windows as the season went along. What is the trade-off for you? Like, do you have a formula of like a touchdown to interception ratio? Like if Joey throws 13 or 14 interceptions, how many touchdowns would he need to make that trade-off for you as a football fan?
Well, I'm gonna call this the Baker Mayfield corollary.
Okay.
Baker didn't throw as many interceptions in college, but like last year for the Bucs, I think he led the NFL in touchdowns, but he also led the NFL in interceptions. You probably don't want to have quite that disparity, because I think he also led the NFL in fumbles. So he was a turnover machine, but he also created, I think he almost threw like 45 touchdowns or something. I don't think
4,500 yards and 41 touchdowns, 16 interceptions is just the snapshot of his. So, that's about right then. So, like, if you tell me, he's going to throw 13, 14 interceptions, like, you better be flirting at least like a 35 maybe, or 30 total touchdowns at the very, very least.
Well, one thing that I think, Nico had the issue where he wasn't throwing the interceptions, great, but he was also getting sacked umpteen times because he was holding on to the ball too long, or he was scrambling for 2 yards or whatever. So there probably also is if you're doing the equation there, touchdowns, minus interceptions, minus sacks. If that number isn't too crazy, if Aguilar basically cuts down on his sack percentage vis-a-vis what Nico was a year ago, you probably take a couple extra picks if he's kind of hitting those tight windows and, again, landing some of those, deep shots down the sidelines.
How much weight do you put into metrics like the Kelly Ford rankings or Bill Connolly's SP+?
Huge. I'm a big analytics guy on that kind of stuff. So I think SP+ is the best. But I think Kelly Ford does a good job. There's several statistical models out there that are pretty good, but Bill Connolly's, I think, SP+ are probably the best ones.
Yes, yes. As somebody, invested in Tennessee's success, I feel like he's been a lot higher on Tennessee and Josh Heupel. If you
I was
remember, he had
hell.
Josh Heupel as the
Yeah.
second best coach in the country, but he has Tennessee up at 12th compared to, the AP voters had Tennessee down at 24. If you were to put your own rankings into account, where would you have Tennessee right now?
Well, so we're going to tease this because I did come out with a playoff. I put together a playoff bracket, 12 teams, but I do not have Tennessee in there.
Sad.
So we kind of had discussed some tiers a couple of weeks ago. I think I've moved a team up, moved a couple teams down. I think Tennessee is probably still just in that rung where they were, but I did because I think they were leapfrogged by a team or two. So I would have Tennessee right now as somewhere between like the fifth and maybe eighth best team in the SEC.
Okay.
If they have a fall off season, I would be stunned. Like there are some teams that have because there's like I think Oklahoma, Auburn, Florida. These are teams that it's not Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, it's Mr. Range's neighborhood. You can create a wild range of variance for those teams this season. I think those teams could miss a bowl game or get to the playoff. If they're having their best and worst, I don't think Tennessee's not going to fall off the wagon if they have a poor season. At worst, it's 7-5, maybe 8-4. I think the schedule is what it is, sets up, to protect them a little bit. And I think Heupel and that roster, they've accumulated some depth. So, but is the ceiling there? I don't know. I think they might just be kind of a fine team this year instead of one that's really flirting with kind of greatness.
Does Florida have the highest variance? Because I've seen some people have them as a playoff team. I've seen some people say the schedule is going to be too tough, and you could see them at 6-6. That feels like a pretty wide gap. Because I agree with what you said about Tennessee. I don't know how high the ceiling is. I do still think at their best they could be a 10-2 playoff team. And I agree with what you said at their worst. They shouldn't go worse than 7-5 when you look at the schedule. Is Florida the highest variance team, or is it Oklahoma? Is there another team that jumps out to you?
I'm going to go OU. I just think Florida has a little bit more. I think Florida's likelier to find their water this year than Oklahoma. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're a playoff team, but I just think that they could be someone that's frisky each and every week. But the schedule is what it is, and Billy could still find himself 6-6, 7-5, and out of a job. Oklahoma, though, you talk about like there's a runway to a playoff where you could start 5-0 and you're playing Texas and Red River, and that means you've beaten Michigan. That means you've really kind of started off hot, and then depending on what happens in that Texas game, Venables could go from villain to hero quite quickly in Norman, or you can look at it the other way and say, man, there's a hell of a lot of speed bumps on this schedule. What if you lose to Michigan? What if you lose to Red River? Oh, and then you have this back slate that's just like top 25 team, top 25 game, top 25 game, top 25 game, culminating with LSU. So those, I think Oklahoma probably has the highest variance, but I would say all three of those teams, are it's the Kevin Durant, anything's possible.
Before we get to your playoff projections, I do want your thoughts on the rumored 28-team expansion rumor that is now circulating courtesy of the Big Ten.
I mean, I don't know if we can cuss on here, but this is like this poop on fire, man. That's like some anarchy stuff. I'm almost convinced. Andy Staples, my former colleague, I think wrote a column on this today. He didn't say this explicitly, but it at least teased it. I'm almost convinced someone leaked this as a way to be like, we got to figure out a way to kill this thing. That this is such a lunacy idea. Like, I mean, Petiti, he has a pro background for folks that don't know. I mean, this is a guy that, actually has very little connection to college football. His entire life has been spent in professional sports. So the fact that he would want something akin to a bastardized, NFL model makes sense. But this is so terrible. I can't even believe it. It almost seemed like it was theater, but Apparently it was real.
I like that theory that it's so bad that someone's trying to get the media to shut it down before it comes out. I thought it was something that was like a scare tactic that like, hey, if you guys don't get all on the same page and just figure out this 14 or 16 team expansion and we're figuring out how many automatic qualifiers, which conference gets, whatever, we're going to go to this and it's going to make everybody upset and everybody's going to be mad. So you better fall in line and get this figured out, because if not, we're going to 28 with 7 SEC teams and 7 Big Ten teams. Although I feel like if I'm the ACC or the Big 12, the idea of getting 5 guaranteed in, it does feel like a lot more money and a lot better setup than they would have in a 14 or 16 team conference or a playoff, excuse me.
The dumbest thing about all this is that, I mean, obviously if you actually got that far down the road, you'd be talking about, 5-3 conference teams, vying 5-3. Arkansas has a great season when they go 5-3 in SEC play, and they're getting in the playoff here. It's all to try to figure out a way to preserve or if you do kill conference championship weekend, this would be the replacement. That's how Petiti basically came to this. Again, I think it's insane. The fact that none of the powers that be, other than Tony Petiti, seem to have any interest in any of his plans, seem to be like he seems to be like the little stepchild brother. He's a stepbrother with a hell of a lot of money and a lot of power. But the fact that Sankey, holds just as big, if not a bigger stick, and the other conference commissioners seem to be in his camp, at least gives me hope that this is, a lot of sound and fury for nothing.
Maybe he just hates the Army-Navy game and wants to put other football in that time slot. Like, hey, we got a whole weekend that we just waste here. And instead of making everybody watch the Army-Navy game, let's play some playoff football. Maybe that's it.
You know what? That's a great point. I think that's very funny. I don't know if you heard this. Somebody said this on a podcast or something, that it was floated, and I thought this was like the best idea. That Army and Navy actually, instead of the weekend after, when the season's over, play this game, especially now that it literally cannot matter for any standing stakes, because they're actually in the same conference. And what happens if they're actually vying for a playoff spot in one of these, bizarro seasons? That since it's literally just a fake game these days, why don't they make that the every year week 0 game?
Yeah. I feel like that would protect that. So maybe it would make sense. Yeah. Maybe they give up their weekend and they come and there's an Ireland game and there's Army Navy, and we make them play in like this weekend when it's like 100 degrees or last weekend when it was 100 and something degrees. That'd be good. All right, Jesse, you've been teasing it. I want to hear your playoff projections. You said you got 12 teams ready to go. Are you going to go in order of conference champions, or are you just going to go your top 12 teams? How are you going to do it?
I'll do it. I'll do it by the bracket, and then I'll explain who my conference champions are with that too. Let me pull it up here. Okay, so big teaser to begin with is last year, ACC, 2 playoff teams in. SEC notoriously had 3. Big Ten got the extra. Well, this year I'm shaking it up. I'm going. This got some caliente to it. It's got a little spice. This playoff field's got a little spice. So I have as many ACC teams, John, as Big Ten teams making the playoff field this year.
Does that mean
just 2?
Okay.
Just 2.
I stepped over your spice. I was going to ask, does that mean 4, 3, 2? Okay, so you got the Big Ten with 2 teams. Is it fair to say that is Penn State, Ohio State, or are you throwing a real curveball in there?
No, that is Penn State, Ohio State. I do think that Oregon is going to just miss out. I'm a little skeptical about Dante Moore. I know the reports have been pretty illuminating that he's, going to be awesome in Will Stein's system. We'll see. They're having to replace a lot of new offensive line faces there. That receiver room is beat to hell. And they're really having to basically rely on 5-star Decory and Moore if they're going to hit there. So, number 9 seed, Texas A&M. I got Mike Elko taking the Aggies to the playoffs. They're that team that I said kind of teased that I think maybe has leapfrogged Tennessee in terms of the SEC hierarchy you and I had kind of discussed. I think the schedule is fairly favorable, a la the Vols, but I just really like what they're going to be defensively, and I think they're going to have the best run game in the SEC. That offensive line plus those three-headed backs, Moss and those guys for College Station, I like that. 8 seed, I got Utah. So I got Utah winning the Big 12. This is a, grab bag league. I don't know who you have in the Big 12 this year, but, some folks have Kansas State. Something, Farmageddon could be a preview. Some folks think it could be Iowa State. I know, TCU's a dark horse. I got Utah. So
I can't decide if I want to put my weight behind or against Texas Tech. There's a part of me that loves them buying their way to the top, but I don't know if I want to see them fail and root against them more. So ask me next week. I'll do my 12 team after we see the result of Farmageddon. I'll have a better idea of whether or not those teams are playoff teams. But I was giving you the floor here. But like I said, I can't decide if I am rooting for Texas Tech or against them.
All right. Well, for my Texas Tech thing, my quick 2 cents on them. I think what Cody Campbell's trying to pull off is awesome. We'll see. It seems like a hell of a lot of fish, new fish in a tank sort of thing. And I don't know how that alchemy is going to work. But we've seen it work one year at Florida State, and then it was a complete disaster. So
it works a lot better in softball, it seems. It seems like it's a lot easier in softball. Just like, hey, go pay the best pitcher in the sport, and then you'll be in the national championship series.
Yeah, true. Exactly. Yeah, you get the number one. You get the best. You get the best arm. So, all right. So 9, these are at-larges, 9 A&M. Utah wins the Big 12. I got Georgia as the 5 seed.
What could go wrong with you backing Texas A&M, by the way? They never disappoint. I'm glad that they are finally going to put it all together and live up to that hype this year. So that's good for them. I'm happy to see it.
Texas 8-4 them, man. Texas 8-4 them. I got them finally making that leap. I like Mike Elko, so I'm gonna go there. I got Georgia as an at-large at 5, playing 12 Tulane. So Tulane is my G5 team. I think John Summerall is going to be SEC coach a year from now. I got Notre Dame playing Ole Miss. That's 6 and 11 seed there. So I also have Lane, who a year ago, all the pressure, all the focus was on Oxford. I think the fact that everyone's going to be talking about all these other SEC teams, Oklahoma, Auburn, Florida, LSU, Texas. I think all these other teams have way more shine. And I think Ole Miss, again, probably one of the best schedules in the entire league. So I have them making the leap this year.
And from a pressure standpoint for Ole Miss, it does feel like they are much more under the radar versus last year, where last year it was like, hey, playoffs are bust. Oh my God, look at this schedule. You should be 11-1 at worst. You should be able to sleepwalk to the playoff here. 10-2, anybody could coach this team to 10-2. That hasn't been the same discussion this year. I feel like it's because they're going from Jackson Dart to Austin Simmons. I assume you having them in the playoff means that you think Austin Simmons is good enough to manage this offense while their defense keeps them afloat, type of thing.
I do. And again, I think the schedule plays a huge part in this. You could have made the argument, that a Missouri sneaks in because of their schedule. But notably, I think this is also, in this, my playoff bracket, folks can claim SEC bias, whatever. I do think the SEC, because of the quarterbacks in the league this year and because of the upside of some of these teams, I think they have a major bounce back season. And I also think the committee, because they took so much crap a year ago for only putting 3 SEC teams in, is going to lean heavily on a little SEC, flavor in their field come season's end too, if push comes to shove. Because I got 7 Texas and number 10, another surprise team here. I got Louisville as my ACC runner-up, and the second ACC team to make the field. So. Now, what do you think about that?
Were you here? You were here in Knoxville when the Jeff Brom stuff happened, right? Were you here in 17?
Oh, yeah.
So was that done, you think, and just got ruined by Jimmy Himes, or what was the story there? Give me a little peek behind the scenes if you don't care.
Yeah, I don't think that it was done, but I do think that I think Brom had a little bit of, I don't know, second guessing or what you want, There was there's some Tennessee folks, the Brad Lampleys and those guys of the world that were well connected with the Louisville, brass. Or not Louisville, he was at where was he at?
Purdue. Yeah, Purdue.
Purdue. Yeah, Purdue.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Purdue. But it's that Louisville Mafia group because he's from Louisville. It's all
Right.
those guys
Right.
who had been there, who were connected to Tennessee and kind of had ties with Brom. So the way Brom's name even got brought into this was, Tennessee had done the dance with Schiano. You danced on that grave to get that done, and then the ball just started rolling downhill where they were talking to Mike Gundy. They were, flirting with all these different, and they just went down. And Brom was someone that they probably should have been looking at from the beginning.
Yeah, as someone there, kind of doing the half fan, half media thing, I was all in on Brom. I liked Brom. I liked his toughness. I thought he was a good coach. So I was actually pretty excited when it came out that Tennessee was closing in on him, and then it all went kaboom.
But there was another thing too, is that he didn't want to. He had not been at Purdue that long, and this was another element from like behind the scenes that he didn't want to like do that team and those kids dirty by basically having just gotten there, started to kind of have some success after being at Western Kentucky and really, thriving there. And he didn't want to do them dirty and turn around so quickly that it was almost like the timing, just wasn't quite right.
Everything again, I was told. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You can finish. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say everything I was told was that, he didn't have it kind of tied into what you're saying about doing them dirty. It's just that he didn't have a chance to talk to his team before the report came out, and it made him mad. It almost seemed like Tennessee was trying to strong arm him before he was ready to kind of make that official, and it made a stubborn guy pretty mad where he said, bleep this, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, and I think there was also some who's coming with him, in turn, because his brother was on the coaching staff and kind of some of that stuff. That whole search, man, it blends together. It's like it looks like a smoothie in my head because of all the different crazy stuff that was happening on a seemingly hourly basis with new names and new hotel, new clandestine meetings, and the fact that it ended with Mike Leach and Curry out in California together when Curry had to take a commercial plane because the folks in Knoxville caught him. I mean, just insane stuff. It
truly is. It truly is. I liked the thing is, I liked most of Curry's guys outside of Schiano. Like I thought that one was a huge swing and a miss, just culturally. Like you can argue or feel how you feel about Schiano and how he would have done at Tennessee. I just thought from a culture standpoint that was going to be a disaster. But then, I thought Gundy, I thought Brom, I thought Leach, all those guys had some merit. And then, of course, you end up with Jeremy Pruitt, who was a complete disaster. But I think Brom would have been the best out of all of them, though. I think Brom could have came here and been pretty good. And I like your Louisville pick. Just looking at their schedule last year, it's easy, to kind of not realize that they had 4 losses, but all 4 of them, one possession games. They only lost by 7 at Notre Dame. They lost a back and forth game at SMU, lost by a touchdown to Miami, and then lost to Stanford by 3. That season could have ended with them in the playoffs last year if 2 of those results go differently.
Yeah, and again, I think Brom's a fantastic offensive coach. I think Miller Moss will be just as good, if not better, than Tyler Shuck, in that offense. And that running game is going to be hell on wheels for ACC teams. So their schedule is more difficult this season, but I think they can navigate it well enough. And then I'll run through my top 4 seeds here. I got Clemson as the number 1 seed. I think there's a chance that they go undefeated in the regular season, particularly if they beat LSU.
Do you think Clemson is the best team in the country, or just is that a combination of their schedule as well?
Combination schedule. I do think Clemson is, Jesus came back in 3 days. It might have taken Dabo a little bit longer to
Blasphemy.
bring
Blasphemy.
back. I
strike you down. Blasphemy.
It might have taken little maybe 5 years to resurrect Clemson's title hopes, but I do think they're alive and well again. And so, teaser, I don't have them winning the national championship, but I do have them as my number 1 seed. Number 2 seed, Penn State. So I do have Penn State beating Ohio State for that Big Ten championship. I just think that I'm a huge James Franklin skeptic, but it's hard to screw this up with as many questions that the Buckeyes have and as many. I like the brain trust of Colton Nickey year 2. Bringing in Jim Knowles there. I think that that's a pretty superpower coordinator combo. Number 3
This will be the year. This will be the year. Penn State. You're back in Penn State and Texas A&M. There are certain certainties. At least Ole Miss. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess Kiffin's never really navigated a season with expectations.
He's Charlie
really.
Browned it every year too.
So yeah, you are going. There's a couple certainties. A&M's not going to win anything, and Penn State's not going to beat Ohio State. Except for that one time. Good luck there. Good luck backing both of them.
If this is going to be a twister year, people are already saying this is going to be crazier than 2007. If we got twister 2 here, I'm going to take some of these crazy outliers happening. So I got Alabama, not a surprise. They've won many. I think Georgia and Alabama won 10 of the last 11 SEC championships. I have Alabama winning the SEC championship. Little Kalen DeBoer revenge season, and then. Number 4, I do have Ohio State. Again, this is because they've reseeded. You don't have to win your conference tournament to necessarily get a bye. I do think if Ohio State beats Texas in week 1, they have a strong case probably to, take that, still get a top 4 seed in the entire tournament. So the way it all plays out, I won't do each individual matchup, but I got Clemson versus Georgia in the semifinals with Clemson beating the Dogs, a little Dabo revenge there. And then I got Alabama beating Penn State, and I have Alabama as my national champion this year, John.
That makes me sick.
Yeah,
that makes me sick.
Not going to be good for the folks in Knoxville.
No.
But we'll see.
We'll see. The idea that Ty Simpson is going to take Alabama to a national championship, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't. Now, could Ty Simpson have taken some of those, 2010 Alabama teams to championships with Nick Saban coaching? Yes. But I just feel like in modern football, I'd be shocked if he was able to game manage his way to a championship. And everything I've read from their scrimmages and seen updates about their practices and stuff, the nicest thing they'll say about him is he's not making mistakes. But they're like, it's because he's checking the ball down a lot. He is trying to game manage his way. And I'd just be surprised.
It worked for Coker.
It did, but that was a long time ago. Could you game manage your way to a championship in modern football? Maybe. Notre Dame almost did it last year with Leonard, and Will Howard, you could argue, was a game manager for most of the regular season, although I do think he stepped up his game drastically in the actual, playoff and national championship run. But we'll see. So run me just through your SEC teams.
So I got 5. That's the big thing. I got 5. So I got in terms of
just go top to 11, bottom. Yeah, just go to top to bottom.
11 Ole Miss, 9 A&M, 5 Georgia, or 7 Texas, 5 Georgia, 3 Alabama.
Okay. I couldn't recall you saying Texas, so I was wondering if you had left them out, but okay, you got them in. That feels like it'd be tough to get both A&M and Texas in as at-larges with them playing, final week of the season. But I guess that would make that last game a little anticlimactic, huh? And then they're going to expand the playoff even further.
That's what Ohio State Michigan was last year, right?
Well, at least Michigan wasn't in. At least Michigan didn't get in.
True.
And, yeah. So I mean, it was anticlimactic for Ohio State, but yeah. Okay. All right. Alabama beating Clemson. So just really we'll throw away the last 5 years. We'll pretend they didn't happen. We're right back to Dabo versus Alabama. Okay.
Might have not been 3 days, might have been 5 years, but the resurrection is here.
Enough with the blasphemy. You're going to get us struck down. We're in the Bible Belt. We're talking about the Bible Belt here. Relax. That would be so annoying if Dabo was back as the number one team in the country.
The amount of
victory
gaslighting
lap,
he's going to
the victory lap he's going to take.
And here's the thing is that Dabo deserves credit for keeping Clemson even on a plane. And now kind of, the plane dipped and now it's trying to, reascend. But the problem is that he will rewrite history to such an awful degree. They brought in, he'll act like they haven't brought in any transfers. Well, they brought in 2 receivers this year finally, and Will Helt, the kid from Purdue. Every year it seems like Purdue loses their best edge rusher and safety to some other school. Well, that kid, the best edge rusher, is now at Clemson. He also, has been historically and fickly loyal to these staffers, these Clemson boys. If it's not the Clemson way, he is very hesitant to go outside the tree, where he finally did that with Garrett Riley at offensive coordinator. And now he's shaking up his defensive staff. He moved on, from one of his longtime lieutenants for a while at defensive, on the defensive side, and brought in Tom Allen. So again, it would not surprise me at all with that. I think they might have the best front seven in football. Klubnik obviously is one of the more seasoned quarterbacks. They're going to be good. It's just, it may be a little nauseating for folks because Dabo is going to let it known that they're good in the very Dabo Sweeney way.
Do you feel the same way about all of that if they lose to LSU week 1? Like, do you think they could keep that together and still end up maybe not getting a bye, but being good enough to get to the playoff and advancing to the championship?
Yes, because we saw it literally happen last season with a worse team. And here's the math on that too, John. The reason why the ACC sucks, and the ACC fans can get mad at us, but it's just true. The reason why it sucks is that their best teams outside of Clemson don't win the games that they're supposed to. Clemson does. By and large, Dabo Sweeney is not losing to a bunch of teams that he should not be losing to. You know who does do that? Florida State. Miami does that. Even with these expectations, Louisville stumps its toes a year ago. Now Syracuse had the huge come up because I think Fran Brown's a great coach, but also they had the world's easiest Power 5 schedule a year ago. So we'll see how they regress this next season. But even if Clemson, a year ago, they got boat raced against Georgia and still made it to the ACC championship game and won, I don't think I would be highly doubtful that they get, hammered at home, but they could lose. And I would still say that that's the team that would rally and still with that ACC schedule, make a run back to Charlotte.
It's funny because the ACC does suck, but as I find myself looking at the schedule, I'm like, at Georgia Tech, that could be a tough game. Like maybe they have a little magic down there. At North Carolina, Bill Belichick might have a perfect game plan. And, Louisville, that's a tricky place to play. And, the ACC sucks, but it does feel like at least maybe there would be a couple of landmines for them to trip over. At South Carolina, of course, that's going to be a tough one, on November 29th. So I know a lot of people are high on Clemson, but to me, that schedule is at least a little bit trickier than most ACC schedules usually are.
It's definitely more difficult than their typical schedule.
Just having 2 SEC teams, bookending it does make it, really tough for them too. So I'm kind of surprised at all the Clemson love because.
Well, they had that a year ago, but I think it's also people think South Carolina's going to be a little bit better. Now we'll see.
Right.
But they definitely think that Louisville is going to be a tough matchup. Going to Louisville, that could be tough. The Georgia Techs, you mentioned them. I think a lot of folks are very high on the potential upside of Brent Key's team. So if Clemson gets to that, number 1 seed, they'll have earned it for sure.
Which I guess that's fair about last year's point, but so maybe that's the case. Maybe Clemson can afford to lose to both SEC teams and just win the ACC. They just win the ACC championship like they did last year because they went in there 9-3 and then was able to beat SMU and get in. All right, let's get to a couple questions. Let's check out the mailbag, clean it out before we get out of here. Does Arch Manning have to make it to New York for the Heisman ceremony in order for people to not consider him a disappointment this season? Says it feels like he's been set up to fail by the media and fans, and just the expectations are too high for someone that doesn't have much experience. Does he have to make it all the way to New York for the Heisman ceremony, or does Texas's team success, can he hide behind that?
He could probably, if Texas is good, Arch Manning's making it to New York. Don't we agree on that because of his last name?
I would
even
say
if
so.
he isn't awesome. I just think, in terms of, I don't know who asked this question, DF or something like that. I do think that it's fair to point out that I don't know if he's been set up to fail. I don't think Arch has been set up to fail, and I think he's a very mature kid. And this is the path that Peyton, Archie, and Eli and his dad, obviously, it all kind of set out for him to kind of slow roll this thing. But even that, they might have tried to slow roll it, but the second Texas plays that first game against Ohio State, it's like there's no slow rolling, John. It's afterburners only. And I think every single week there's going to be a referendum on his play and his legacy. And that kind of sucks for that kid.
Well, I think that's what he means by saying he's been set up to fail. Is that like you have Feinbaum saying he's the best quarterback prospect. You have guys saying he's going to do something that hasn't been done with the combination of athleticism. Right. Like I think that's what he means by saying he's set up to fail, is that if he doesn't come out and have 40 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, we'll look at him and be like, not that good.
Joe Burrow threw 60 touchdowns like 5 years ago, and he's already been whitewashed.
Well, he couldn't. He wasn't as fast as Arch. So maybe if Arch, has a couple 80-yard runs. I know Burrow could run and scramble, but it wasn't like he had the afterburners. Now, Trevor Lawrence, on the other hand, could do some of that. But I do think Arch has to be near perfect to live up to the expectations, which I do think is pretty tough for him. But it's not like he doesn't have the last name Manning. So, like, it wasn't like it's the media setting it up as much as it is just, hey, having the last name Manning. All right, so let's see. Assuming Tennessee gets average quarterback play in the first few weeks, is this year's Georgia game an if not now, then when type of game for Heupel, meaning like kind of now or never? If Tennessee at least has adequate quarterback play, if they can't beat Georgia in Neyland Stadium early in the season when Tennessee is undefeated and should be, let's just say, uninjured in front of a raucous crowd that still has reason to believe, would it be an if not now when type of thing? I
don't know. I'll let you take first crack at this one.
Well, I feel like you're never going to have a better setup. So from that perspective, I looked at 23, I looked at 21 as Tennessee didn't have talent that could compete with Georgia. 21, it was Heupel's first year. Hendon Hooker was not the Hendon Hooker of 2022. Of course, Joe Milton wasn't dynamic enough in 23. I don't think you had the guys in the trenches to compete with Georgia and compete with them in the trenches, but also you combine that with their own quarterback play. Like, I don't know how many times you'll be looking at them coming into Knoxville where you could say that that's going to be their quarterback's pretty much first start, in a game that matters. Is that fair to say when you look at Gunnar Stockton?
Well, so I was going to say this from just knowing a bunch of stuff from Georgia Ties and that kind of stuff, twofold to why you could rubber stamp made you look question about if not now then when for beating Georgia for this season for Tennessee. The Gunnar Stockton thing at the forefront for sure. That's going to be his first road start and 100,000 fans in Neyland Stadium going crazy. That is something that is absolutely an element that Tennessee should and is going to want to try to take advantage of. I think the other reason why, if it's not now, then when, is, again, this is kind of some inside stuff, but I don't know if Georgia, I have Georgia in the playoff this year, but I don't think they're going to win a national championship. And folks will probably say, oh, Kirby Smart's team's taking a step back because that's going to be a couple years in the road. They haven't made it to the championship, or who knows? We'll see how the season plays out. But I'm telling you, John, there is massive, massive confidence in Athens about this freshman class that they brought in. To the point that there's multiple freshmen, some 5 stars, a couple others, that are legitimately pushing and or in position to potentially start, true freshmen at Georgia, which is fairly rare. And it's not because the guys behind them or veteran players suck. It's because these guys are just that good and you can't keep them off the field. And so if you know that those guys are going to have multiple seasons to play in Athens, that would be concerning. And you're talking about major positions, offensive tackle, wide receiver, running, some of these defensive tackle. So again, I think the if not now, then when thing, it could hold some merit.
Now, I do think, probably not the same caliber, when you look at Georgia's recruiting, but like there is some real palpable buzz about Tennessee's freshmen as well, that they have hit on, 5 or 6 guys in this class that are going to be on the field this year and should make plays. And of course, Tennessee, again, not Georgia's level, but recruiting some blue chippers in the next class too. So I do think Tennessee's cycling up a bit, but like, I just can't help but think like this is going to be the worst on paper quarterback they'll have coming into Knoxville in the foreseeable future. Like, again, like you can say first road start, and I know it might sound stupid because he started a playoff game last year, but like to me, it might as well be his first real start because last year they had the kid gloves on. Last year, there were no expectations for him in that game against Notre Dame. It was kind of like, hey, we'll come out here. We'll see if you could do anything. We're going to take it really cautious with you, and we're going to babysit you. That's not going to be the case, this season. And they get Marshall, they get Austin Peay to get his feet wet, but like he's going to be asked to play actual quarterback when he comes into Knoxville. Like he's going to have to actually be the guy where they're going to like have a game plan for him, and he's going to have to go in and play, just actual SEC top 10 type of football. So I even look at it as maybe just his first start in general, like as the real guy, as the guy that can't hide behind youth and inexperience.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Notre Dame thing still counts as his first start, but it certainly was not a road game. That was it was a weird deal with the shooting and all that, the game getting delayed.
I forgot about that.
This will be a big test. This will be a big test for sure.
Who do you think is the hottest quarterback in the SEC?
I don't. What kind of question is that? I don't know. What are they asking?
Who do you think's the best looking quarterback? I guess like who do you trust? Who you throwing the keys to? I guess it's the Mark Sanchez test. Who's the alpha? Who walks in and you remember Trent Dilfer said, hey, I don't know if he's going to be the best, but if all the quarterbacks are hanging out, they're all throwing the keys to Mark Sanchez. Never mind. You don't think any of the quarterbacks are handsome. All right, disregard.
I don't know. I mean, I my guess is everyone's asking for Arch to pick up the check, but Nuss says, hey, I'll do it.
Dale, feel free to let us know in the YouTube comments who you find to be the hottest quarterback in the SEC. Other guys can post that as well on the YouTube channel. Who is more likely to be a college football coach next year, Nick Saban or John Gruden?
John Gruden, unequivocally. I don't think Saban's coming back to coach unless he's taking over an NFL franchise. And even then, I'm skeptical that Saban gets back in the game. It seems pretty apparent that John Gruden wants back in the game. Now, will he get an opportunity? I don't know. There was word on the street that, he wanted the UCF job a year ago, and they didn't even give him a sniff, and they went back to Scott Frost. So, some of the comments Gruden has made, not even the comments that are in this NFL lawsuit withstanding, the controversial comments, not those. They got him, booted from the Raiders. Some of the comments that he's made about like what this modern version of college football is would be a major red flag to me if I was an athletics director. But we've seen with these celebrity coaches, man, I mean, like ADs, they fall hook, line, and sinker for them. And Deion, I think, has worked out to some degree. Obviously, Trent Dilfer has done a complete faceplant at UAB. I think he's going to be fired by season's end. It would not surprise me if somebody gives Gruden a shot. It's pretty clear that he wants Arkansas and that Walmart money. So
I think I'm opposite than you. I think I say it's, to me, Saban by far to be more willing to be coaching in college football. I just don't see Gruden going to the college football. I think if he takes care of this
program
lawsuit,
is Nick Saban going to go to?
I think if LSU or Florida are both open, he at least listens to both of those programs. Would he not? Like if Brian Kelly face plants this year and they fire him and he knows the talents and the grounds and can bookend his career, or even Florida comes open and he knows the resources he'd have there, I think he'd have to listen to both of those schools.
Wow. That's spicy. That's some spice right there.
Are those not two top 6 jobs, like pretty easily? Like at least 2 top 10 jobs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that again, like he would be much more inclined to go back to LSU because he's kind of sung its praises and how much he loved there and kind of lamented the fact that he left for the Dolphins when he did. And I think the powers in the be in that state. That would be pretty fascinating. Again, I see no chance that Nick Saban comes back. I just don't think he wants to deal with this NIL world. Gruden wants to be back.
He's got the president pulling strings for him to set up rules and stuff. So, I mean, he's got an inside man cleaning up the sport. I'm surprised that you have the opposite take there, because I just don't see Gruden as a college coach at all. Like, I just don't see him.
I don't see him as a college coach either, but I think he's never going to get to coach in the NFL again, and he so badly wants to coach.
Okay. All right. Well, anything you want to add?
Here's the actual answer. It's the coach that wasn't named but is also out of a job and has also won a championship. It's Jimbo Fisher.
I thought you were going to say Ed Orgeron, because he said just now before we came on that he wants to get back into coaching, that he has the itch again.
I saw that. Yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
I'm sure he's itching. I'm sure he's got a little sunburn. He's got an itch, but I don't know if he's actually itching to get back into coaching. Jimbo, though, it would not surprise me if Jimbo finds himself on the sidelines a year from now.
Who the hell would get excited for Jimbo Fisher to be coaching them, though? That's the question. It is. How do you sell that? Like Gruden and Saban, obviously you could sell both pretty easily. I just don't understand how you sell anybody on Jimbo Fisher in 2026, but we'll see how it plays out. There are a lot of coaches.
An SEC job. I didn't say he was getting an SEC job.
Well, if you're Jimbo Fisher, what's the hell's the point of doing it if you're not getting a big time job? I mean, surely he's not hard up for money.
Dude, because these guys don't.
I guess
you can't say explicitly that they don't like their wives, but they don't like they can only play so much golf and do so much fishing, and then they're like, man, I kind of want to go yell at some kids a little bit.
I guess Dan Mullen was willing to go to UNLV, so I guess we'll see. All right, feel free to send Jesse some questions for next week. We'll record again early, try to have it out to everybody by Tuesday morning at the very least. Slow Mesh, John Reed, Jesse Simonton, anything you want to say on the way out?
Let's get it started. Can't wait for week 1 or week 0, Farmageddon. Week 1, though, when the real season starts, I'm stoked.
We'll have some actual games to talk about next week. Talk to you then.
So good. See you, brother.
See ya.